Hello and welcome to the Services School Stories podcast. You'll hear from veterans and partners who'll share their stories and insights about how you can use higher education to transition from the military and achieve your goals. Now let's get going.
Welcome to Services School Stories, the podcast where we help service members and veterans chart a path from military life to higher education and beyond. I'm your host and director of VetLink, Whitney. Today, we're talking with someone whose story captures what's possible when discipline meets ambition and preparation meets opportunity. Our guest, Zach Wright, served in the United States Air Force before deciding to take a leap into higher education. Like many veterans, Zach didn't go straight to a four-year university. After leaving the military, he spent several years working before enrolling at Northern Virginia Community College. From there, he began applying to some of the most competitive universities in the country and, of course, got in. Today, we'll talk to Zach about how he built his academic path from community college to the Ivy League and what it's like to be a veteran at Stanford, and his advice for other service members who dream of attending elite schools. Zach, welcome to Service School Stories. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys having me on here. I'm so excited to talk about just the journey from Air Force to university. It's been a lot, but I think it's a very formulaic and repeatable path. So I'd love to share anything I can that would help my fellow veterans do something similar.
All right, well, let's start with that. Can you tell us a little bit about your background, your time in the Air Force, and kind of what motivated you to join in the first place?
Absolutely. So I'm from a military family. We fought in, I think, every major American war from the Revolution, which, not always good. But I think my grandfather in World War II was the one who really started the military pride in our family. That was really what started, like, us looking at ourselves as a military family and taking pride in it, and that really being pretty core to our identity. And all my cousins are in the military, all of them. So I had a pretty, clear path in front of me. I wasn't sure that I wanted to at first. I was actually pretty big into high school athletics. I was a big swimmer. Actually, I had a four-year college lined up to go to swim, but I injured myself, and then that was off the table. So the Air Force was the next natural step for me, and I was happy to do it. I did 4 years. I was a staff sergeant out in Texas by the end, and the last year I actually got to be a military instructor, which was amazing. Going from working on ejection seats on the B-1 to talking to the new airmen coming into the base about how to Air Force was just an amazing experience. Just getting to hear everyone's stories and backgrounds. They really changed my life, honestly, in the way that I communicate and the way that I think. So that was an experience I'm incredibly grateful for. So from there, I got out with big plans. I wanted to, go to four-year university. COVID got out right at the beginning of COVID. So, me and everyone else totally derailed my plans. So I decided I'll wait till this blows over. Just 2 weeks, right? Well, didn't work out that way. So eventually I just decided I'm going to go back to work for now, because there's no way I'm going to do well in a university if I'm going to school online. I don't have the attention span for that. That wouldn't be a good fit for me. I'm just going to work for a little while. So a little while turned into a few years, but those were good years, and I learned a lot. I ended up in a corporate role doing what's effectively sales, doing corporate sales, business development management in Northern Virginia. And I was good at it. I liked it. But there's definitely a bit of a stigma for someone not having a college degree in that world. And they gave me an opportunity, which I appreciated. But in certain circumstances, those opportunities are limited by that piece of paper. So I knew it was time for me to go ahead and pivot and go get that piece of paper. But the schools I wanted to go to were not super interested in someone who graduated high school with a 1.4 GPA. I did not care about my GPA when I was in high school. I didn't think it mattered. And now here I am 10 years later, and it really matters. So I went back to community college, got my second associate's degree. This time I got a 4.0. And I applied to all the schools that I thought were previously out of my reach. I applied to a bunch of the Ivies, Stanford, obviously, and a ton of backup schools. I must have sent out 20 different college applications. And I was absolutely amazed when services school reached out to me and said, wait, you're not doing this by yourself. And I wasn't even sure how it happened, honestly. I was like, who gave them my information? This is amazing. I feel like I just had like a guardian angel, secret advocate. It was amazing. I think it was actually Sydney who spoke to me first. Who's now the CEO of Service to School. Couldn't think of a better person to lead. She's wonderful. So I was set up with a mentor, Hadley. Hadley was wonderful. She made sure my essays were clean, made sure I was doing everything correctly. And I definitely felt more confident going in, knowing that I had someone who'd been there and had, made this transition successfully, having my back. So the results started rolling in, and I was just absolutely floored. I couldn't believe it. I got into multiple Ivies, Stanford, but I'm an East Coast guy, so I actually wasn't going to go to Stanford at first. So at first, I was going to go to there were two of the Ivies I was stuck between. One of them, the campus wasn't walkable. I have a bum knee, and that walk was just too rough, too mountainous. I couldn't do it. And the second school, there were some complications involving scholarships versus my GI Bill. There was some conflict there. But Stanford had zero conflicts. They said, save your GI Bill. We don't care if you use that or not. We want you. We want you to come to our school, and we will pay for it 100%. And that, it doesn't get any better than that. I felt appreciated. I felt wanted. And I did it. I moved across the country. I drove from Northern Virginia, just outside DC, to Palo Alto, California, with my dog Charlie, my co-pilot. And I'm just so grateful for the opportunity. I'm out here on a full ride scholarship. And if you told me that was going to happen 10 years ago, I wouldn't have believed you.
Right. So let's kind of go back a little bit and go back to community college and everything else. I know that you have an end goal of being a lawyer. Did you have that same end goal when you started this process and were thinking higher education?
No, definitely not, actually. Part of my interest in law came from my interest in arguing. I like to talk, as you can probably tell. And arguing is, not all that attorneys do, but definitely being able to advocate for one perspective and understand other perspectives, I think, is very important in the admissions process, because you're considering not only how you view yourself, but how others will view you, and then racking and stacking your story versus other stories. You have to make sure that you're very considerate of just perception. And I mean, it is marketing to an extent as well, but it was a pretty natural fit coming from the corporate sales. I just figured it was the best thing. I'm a humanities guy too. I didn't want to do STEM. It was the best way for me to really tie together my strengths. And, Stanford Law School is the number one in the country. I think it's the number one in the world right now, actually. So I can see it from my window. So that's my motivation every day. I start my day. I do as much as I can before class, before bed. And if I ever run out of fuel, run out of steam, I just look out the window, and that's the school I want to go to when my 4 years finished.
Zach, so going back, why Northern Virginia Community College? Why did you choose that one in particular?
Absolutely. Well, I did some research, and there are a lot of options in that area, especially being that close to DC. But I really wanted to focus on faculty. I'm a people person. I like to connect with people, especially my professors. And Northern Virginia, by far and away, had the best rated curriculum, professors. They're just one of the best community colleges in the country. They're amazing. So I went toward the campus, met some of the faculty, and I was blown away. So I enrolled immediately, and it was one of the best decisions I've ever made in my entire life. There were some challenges for sure, and being a little bit older as well. I, had some trouble relating to my classmates, but I made some friends, and the faculty there are a few of them I still speak to on a regular basis. And which reminds me, recommendation letters are absolutely crucial for this process. And, very much a quality over quantity aspect as well. I would actually say that having one really meaningful personal connection letter of recommendation is stronger than 4 mediocre letters of recommendation. So definitely while you're in the college process, anyone listening, do not compromise on the faculty that you want to build those relationships with, because that can change the course of your life.
Incredibly vital information that I, as an advisor, at least have conversations about telling service members to get enrolled and immediately go into office hours to meet your instructors, to start building the foundation of that relationship. Which also leads me to, you started doing pretty in-depth homework, actually, probably more than the typical service member might do. Um, how did you go about finding and figuring all of that out about Northern Virginia?
As far as the faculty,
Yeah.
well, I did a compare contrast of the schools in the local area. I didn't want to drive more than half an hour, and there was a campus just down the street from me. And then I began to look at the offerings on their curriculums, lists online, people just talking, forums, who had what experience in what area and what specialties. And then lastly, I looked at Rate My Professor as well for the areas of interest that I had and who they had on staff. And generally speaking, they had some pretty tenured professors. Some of them have been doing this for 20 years. And I was fortunate to receive a few letters of recommendation from some professors who have been doing it for a very long time and got to know me very well personally. So I'm lucky for two reasons there. I made some lifelong friends and mentors, and I also got those letters of recommendation.
So, Zach, knowing the emphasis that Stanford places on academic letters of recommendation, how did you go about building those relationships with your instructors?
Absolutely. At the time, I didn't know that Stanford was where I would be attending, and I actually wasn't as concerned with letters of rec going in. I'm very fortunate that I connected with the right faculty because it ended up being absolutely crucial to my journey. But the academic letters of recommendation are a little bit different than the personal letters of recommendation. They focus more on who you are as a student, not just who you are as a person. So you have to have demonstrable skill and interest in the class. If you're very active participant, if you ask the right questions, you go see them in their office hours, then they know that you're genuinely interested and that you care about what's going on, and that will make them more willing to advocate for you in that way.
Knowing your previous background and everything, did you face any type of doubts or imposter syndrome as you started applying to some of these elite schools?
Absolutely. Actually, I would say that was my primary feeling when I was applying to most of the Ivies and to Stanford. Just knowing that who typically applies to these schools and the percentage of people who get in is so low, I felt a little bit ridiculous, honestly. Why am I doing this? They're all going to say no. But then multiple said yes. Some of them with one-digit percentage acceptance rates. Actually, a few of them with about 1%. Stanford's transfer class this year was about 1%. And a few of the others that I got into were pretty comparable. So that definitely changed a few things for me as well. Just how I think about what's possible was amazing. But definitely getting through the imposter syndrome on the front end was and continues to be a challenge, if I'm being completely honest. My classmates are they're Olympic athletes. They're like Forbes 30 under 30. They're CEOs, founders, and they're in their early 20s. It's amazing, but it's also, a bit of a gut check too. So I have to be on my A game. But I am feeling less like an imposter every class because I can do the same things that they can do, and I can outwork them. And all respect to them, they made it here as well. But for anyone who feels that they don't belong in these circles, yes, you do.
Incredibly important. And thank you for that. Can you knowing that you did apply to multiple schools, would you say, how did you apply to 15?
I think it was 20 in total.
20 in total. That's pretty extensive. How did you go about navigating applying to 20 schools? How did you plan and time management?
For sure. I treated it like a full-time job. I did. From 9 to 5 every day, I sat at my desk. I had to organize. I had to prioritize. I had to make calls. I had to find out where I could get assistance, where I couldn't. And I even had to coordinate with the professors for the letters of recommendation. Another hurdle was getting my records from the Community College of the Air Force. They're a bit of a bureaucracy sometimes. They can take some time getting everything that you need. So I'm definitely glad that I started that 6 months in advance because I didn't have much time to spare by the time application dates rolled around. But I got them all in, and that's what matters. I did prioritize by where I wanted to go, but I also tempered that with how likely I was to get in. So realistically, the top 3 universities in the world, am I going to get in? Probably not. Am I going to submit an application? Absolutely I am. but I'm not going to let that take up my entire time, because that would absolutely compromise my chances at other institutions that are more likely to accept me. Now, in the end, it is a good thing that I applied to those schools because Stanford gave me the green light. But if I could do it over again, I would do the same thing that I did the first time, just because I hedged my bets, but I also didn't sell myself short.
As you're applying, you were also in school, correct?
So actually, I began the process while I was in school, yes, but I didn't go to school the last semester when I was applying. So I finished up my associate's degree, and then I used that semester between finishing up in the fall to apply. So I was in a very fortunate situation to be able to do that. I know that's not the reality for everyone, but it was definitely worthwhile for me.
Do you think there was anything that you did academically that helped you to stand out in the process?
Absolutely. And it's tough to say, but it's true. So I'm just going to put it out there. If you want to get into these very, very competitive institutions, you have to have a very high GPA, either a 4.0 or very close to it. And sometimes very close to it isn't enough. Sometimes a 4.0 isn't enough. But take your school seriously. Give it every ounce that you have, because that's what it takes to succeed. That is what it takes to outcompete these people who have been preparing for this since they were kids, because that's who you're competing against. It's not just the people beside you. It's everyone from all over the country, all over the world, who want these same spots. So you have to demonstrate that you're not only capable, but you're passionate, and you have to have a mission. You have to have a story. And again, those letters of rec.
One of the questions that I get asked often enough, as somebody who has the background in humanities, I know some of the requirements, even mathematically. What was the highest math that you ended up taking before transferring in?
Who the highest math?
Highest math.
Not
It's
high,
a question
actually.
I get asked often.
Yeah, no, I applied for humanities programs, so I don't think they looked at the math as strongly as they would have otherwise, but I didn't take any high maths. I think it was effectively like a pre-calc at Northern Virginia. I didn't take calculus. I took a statistics class, but I don't think stat is super intense. But yeah, no big maths for me, not yet.
With the important distinction that you weren't going into engineering. You weren't going computer
Exactly.
science. You weren't going
Correct.
the STEM route. You were going the
No,
humanities route, which is a different set of requirements.
No CS for me, no STEM, absolutely not. I'm not built that way. That's I use the other side of my brain.
Knowing that you came from a semester system, how has it been transitioning into the quarter system?
Quite a shock, to be honest. I am still adjusting. We're on week 3 right now, and week 3 is where the rubber meets the road. That's what they say out here, because a quarter is 10 weeks. And I thought it would be easier. I thought, quarter system, fewer classes to focus on at once. That's perfect. No, it is intense. It's worth it. You can potentially get more done faster, but it is intense. So I'm only on week 3, but I've had multiple nights where I've been up well past midnight, close to 4 or 5 a.m., just making sure I get everything buttoned up for the next day and the day after that.
So do you kind of treat it like your full-time job? Are you really structured as to how you do your day? Or how are you making sure that your time management is on point?
Sure, for sure. I do have to be very structured, because otherwise I'm just too ADHD and I'll end up doing things that don't matter, and then find myself 10 minutes before class realizing that I didn't do my homework. So I write everything down. Everything. I live and die by my notes tab. And that works for me. My time management is pretty good, but I have to be very consistent. And if I slip on my organization, everything slips. So I am very reliant on it, but as long as I'm consistent, it works.
All right. So knowing that you are not just navigating classes, I'm hoping, trying to have a social life, but also you're in a leadership position with the Stanford undergraduate veterans. How are you juggling all 3 of those things?
That's true. Not trying to do everything yourself is something that I learned as I was a staff sergeant in the Air Force. Because when I first started, I was like, I'll just do everything. And there just aren't enough hours in the day. You'll run yourself ragged. And I was fortunate enough at OMAC to meet some amazing people, Amanda Rodriguez, who's the head of the program, and Kyle Keene, who's another veteran. And he's the president. He's absolutely just fantastic, brilliant, very supportive. And he helped me, get comfortable with this role, understanding that I don't have to do everything. I do what I can, and what I can is enough. And what I can't, as long as I communicate and delegate, it's going to be all right.
Incredible. And Kyle Keen is an amazing person. I absolutely everything that he's doing over there. You're now the director of outreach, though, for the Stanford undergraduate veterans. It's a pretty good role. What does that position involve?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
Well,
also, why did you get involved this early? You
sure,
just got to
sure.
campus.
That's true. But I like having a community. I like having my squadron per se. You're home away from home. And I've made some friends here with some of the other transfers, but there's nothing like a military community. There's just the bond is different, the camaraderie is different. So I wanted to get in on that as soon as I could. And pretty early on, I identified a need. A lot of the conversations were revolving around people not knowing what they were going to do for work studies or internships or careers. And I was like, we're at Stanford, guys. What are you talking about? Like, what do you mean? We can go anywhere. But oftentimes that's not necessarily seen as true. Being in the position you're in, it's hard to have that perspective if you're in the actual school and, the anxiety and uncertainty of the job market. So I decided to bring in my skill set from what I did in the corporate world, which is going and knocking on doors and introducing myself to people and making those connections on behalf of the veterans here. So what I told them, I said, tell me where you want to work. Tell me what you want to do for them and what you're studying. And then I will do my best to find someone at that company who has an interest in someone like yourself and make that introduction. And we've been off to a very strong start. I'm very pleased to report.
So you're not just maximizing your opportunity, you're also helping to maximize the opportunity for the other veterans that are there.
Well, we succeed together. And that's how I look at it. That's true in the military, and it's true here as well. It's what do they say? A rising tide raises all boats. So we're trying to raise the tide and bring everyone up and make sure that everyone's skills get used for the greater good.
Well, that just answered my next question. You are obviously that's an incredibly important value to you personally. Um, what are some of the things that the Stanford undergrad vets, what do they do to support the students that are on campus?
Absolutely. So there's a good bit of community involvement here. It's mostly social, getting to know other students and like, hey, we're veterans. We're not that scary. We're not. We're just like you. We're just regular people. And it's early days yet. I haven't been here for very long, but I've definitely seen a very consistent effort to just really be a part of the community and not just our own little pocket enclave, but to really be a part of the Stanford community as a whole. And I was very glad to see that because obviously it's our home. This is where we live. So it's nice that everyone else was on that page as well.
So, on a more personal note, you're studying public policy, right? And you're kind of on a pre-law track. What are some of your long-term goals?
Absolutely.
And what kinds of impact do you hope to make in the future?
Absolutely. So I just received a confirmation for my EIN for my LLC Veteran Sherpa, which is what I'm going to be using to help veterans start their own businesses. This is also why I'm going for this odd conglomerate of venture capitalism, business development, pre-law program, because I want to make sure that I understand the legalities and obstacles that veterans face when they start their own businesses. Because right now it's really tough. It's very decentralized. You can say, oh, I have this grant. I have this priority on a federal contract, but totally missing another opportunity that might be state specific or even city specific. You have no idea. There's no one database where you can find everything. There are a few databases you can find lots of things, but my goal is to be the guy veterans come to and say, hey, here's what I want to do. Here's my idea. Help me start this without getting sued. And again, that rising tide, so we all succeed together. And there'll be more on that on my LinkedIn pretty soon, by the way. If anyone wants to follow me on LinkedIn, I'm just Zach Wright at Stanford. You'll find me. But that's something I'm very passionate about. And so many veterans have so many ideas, great, just innovative ideas, but they're afraid to step out there and start them because it's intimidating, because we don't know what we have available to us. And it can seem just a completely daunting task that's just impossible, but it's not. It's difficult, but again, we succeed together.
So, continuing to pull other service members up behind you which is the ethos of service to school, but obviously clearly something that you also have deeply ingrained to everything that you're doing there at Stanford and of course in your future endeavors. Do you think your military service kind of influenced your interest into doing this particular type of degree? Like what led you to this in particular?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would actually say that my last year in the military is what pushed me to this. I saw and met so many of the students, especially in my classes, were oftentimes just brilliant and inspired, but a little hesitant because they didn't know the lay of the land. And I was a bit surprised to see that after the military, that still persists because you're in a new environment. And that same anxiety you felt entering the military oftentimes exists leaving the military because the world has changed and oftentimes it's changed without you. It is my life's goal to make it so that veterans who want to build something do not let that fear be an impediment to their success.
Let's by that.
Thank you, Whitney.
So I want to kind of close by speaking to the veterans and service members listening who might be where you were a few years ago, working, unsure about maybe going back to school or doubting that they could make it to a place like Stanford. What would you tell them?
Never compromise. Pick what's important to you and let that be your North Star. It will oftentimes be more difficult for you than it will the person beside you, the person who has backing that you don't have, but you can outwork that person. That is your freedom. You are free to work as hard as you want to work. And that is how we win. Rely on the people next to you, the people that you trust, your squadron. Rely on me, other veterans. We are here for each other. We need to be here for each other, especially in this crazy world. So don't doubt that you can do something because it's hard. Nothing worth doing was ever easy. Believe in yourself.
Absolutely. So if there's one practical piece of advice, something that they can actually start doing today to begin that journey, what would it be?
Absolutely. Time management, 100%. You brought it up earlier, and I'd like to end with that. It is so crucial to understand you don't get any time back. We have a very limited number of days, hours, minutes on this planet. So spend it accordingly. Nothing is promised. Tomorrow could be your last day. So make sure you spend every single minute, every hour doing what's meaningful to you. And that means keeping track of your time and spending it the way you would spend money. You know, like you don't spend it unwisely. Don't spend it foolishly. Spend your time meaningfully, diligently. Be very intentional about where you spend your time and who you spend it with. And that will change the trajectory of your life.
Your story is very much an inspiration, not just because of the schools that you were accepted to, but because of your determination, your humility, and of course, the purpose behind your journey. You've shown that the path from community college to Stanford isn't just possible, but it's attainable with the right mix of perseverance, planning, and support. For our listeners, if you're thinking about applying to an elite school, don't let fear or self-doubt hold you back. Use our resources, use other service members who I have no doubt you can reach out to. Use them, ask them how they did it, and let them be kind of like a beacon or a guiding light or even a pathway. Follow in their footsteps if you have to. Know that your service and experience matters deeply in higher education. There is so much value that you bring to the classroom. Zach, thank you for joining us and for everything you're doing to support your fellow veterans through your Stanford Undergraduate Vets organization and, of course, beyond with what you're going to be doing in the future. Do you have any parting words for us? No,
just thank you for having me. Honestly, thank you so much. This has been absolutely wonderful to get to speak with you and the other veterans out there. I'm very grateful for the opportunity.
Well, that's it for this episode of Service to School Stories. I'm Whitney Kaysen. Thanks for listening, and remember, your next mission might just be in the classroom.
That's all we have for this episode. Join us next week, same time, same place, where we share more Service to School stories. Service to School Stories is hosted by Sydney Mathis, Chief Program Officer, and Alec Emmert, Service to School CEO. Our podcast is produced and edited by our Director of Communication, Amanda Tobias. Service to School is a 501c3 nonprofit providing free college admission support to transitioning service members and veterans. Join us next week and follow us for more on your favorite social media platforms.